So Scott and Lacy tried for about 3 years to get pregnant, but they weren't having much luck. So they talked about the option of adoption, but then Lacy, surprise, surprise, she ends up pregnant. And it was said that the two of them were just thrilled. Now, while Lacy was pregnant, she tried her best to stay fit. She would go on walks, she would take yoga classes, and tried her best to eat clean, eat kind of healthy, you know? Later in her pregnancy, Lacy mentioned to family members that she was getting sick while she was walking, just walking. So she's taking her dog out for a walk, and she said that she just got uncontrollably sick. She was afraid she was going to pass out. And after taking a little break from walking, Lacy attempted to go on a walk again with her dog, and the same thing started to happen. She talked to the doctor, and he said that she should stop walking and just start resting more. So Lacy says that she stops walking. Now, this may not sound important, but it is, and it will apply later. So around November 2002, Lacy decided it would be best if she quit her job as a substitute teacher because this pregnancy was just getting rough. She wasn't feeling well, and she was extremely uncomfortable. So luckily enough, she could quit her job, you know? During this time, Scott buys a 14-foot aluminum boat, and it's just a meh boat, nothing special, but it was weird because he never mentioned it to anyone. He never mentioned to anyone that he was buying this boat. We're not sure if Lacy knew or not about the boat, but she was also the type of person who would say something to her mom or family like, oh yeah, Scott bought a boat. Lacy's father was an avid fisher. So boat, you know? So Lacy's trying her best to handle, the pregnancy. Now, Scott was handling the pregnancy in other ways. So Scott had this acquaintance. This is where things get weird to me because it's whatever. Scott has this acquaintance. It's a female friend. This friend was like, Scott, you need to meet this friend of mine. Her name is Amber Frey. And I just think you two would really hit it off. And Scott's friend just talked him into going on a date with Amber and gave him Amber's number. So not a great friend, but okay, don't be that shitty friend. Some of you. So Scott gets the number, right? He chooses to call Amber and he leaves her a voicemail saying hey, my friend, she mentioned you and thought, we should connect. So Amber ends up getting in touch with Scott. I guess sometime during the conversation, Scott describes to Amber what he looks like on the phone. And he's like, I'm not very tall, I'm overweight, I have a belly, and I have long greasy hair. That's what he tells Amber. My first thought was maybe he's trying to downplay himself because he looks like Ben Affleck. Let's be honest here. He does. Brothers, almost. I don't know. My thought was maybe he's trying to downplay himself so she would say no to the date because he knew he couldn't say no. Or he was just trying to be funny. Either way, that's how he described himself. And I guess Amber was like, what? Long greasy hair? Hot. So they decide to meet at the Elephant Bar in Fresno on November 20th, 2002. So after they meet at the bar, they decide to go get Japanese food, but Scott said that he needed to check into his hotel and asked if she wanted to come with him. So he got a hotel room. The two of them, they go to the room and he decides to take a shower and get dressed for dinner. Meanwhile, she's in the room with him. So, that's kind of a weird first date. Could you imagine on your first date meeting someone, they're like, come up to my room, I'm gonna take a shower. Unless they're just trying to fuck. Anyways, so they go up to the hotel room together. Scott takes a shower and then he gets dressed and then the two of them enjoy some strawberries and champagne. And then they decide to go out and get something to eat. They talked about Amber being a massage therapist and he told her that he was single and living in Sacramento. And with his job, he had a warehouse in Modesto. Scott told Amber that he was going to Alaska for Thanksgiving and then to Maine. And for New Year's, he was going to Paris, France, and would be traveling all over Europe in January for business. Then they go back to Scott's hotel room where Amber stayed with him that night. Now, I'm not quite sure where Lacy was at this time. I'm assuming she's at home or with her family, but I'm not sure what he told Lacy in order to get away with this. I'm assuming it was probably work. He had to do something for work, but I couldn't find a straight answer. But that happened. Douche. So Thanksgiving approaches, and Scott and Lacy, they went down to San Diego to see or stay with Scott's family. And then while they were there, they decided to go to Disneyland. It was said that during the trip or their day trip to Disneyland, Lacy was just miserable. She was super sick. She was uncomfortable. Every time you hear pregnancy stories, it's always so black and white. It's like some people freaking love being pregnant. It's the best thing ever. They're like, oh my God, I glow. My nails are so long. My hair is so long and luscious. Like the best thing ever. You know, they're just like so hyped on it. And then there's the other half are like, don't do it. That was the most messed up thing I've ever done. The reviews are very mixed. And plus, like, the last thing you want to do when you're pregnant is go to Disneyland. So much walking. It's like you can't go on anything, really, except for, like, it's a small world. And you're like, yeah, it's a small world. So when they returned back home, Scott had planned a second date with Amber. They decided to meet on December 2nd, and they were going to go hiking. And Amber was going to bring her daughter this time because Scott wanted to meet her. After they went on their hike, they went back to Amber's house, cooked dinner, and then Scott says that he stayed the night at Amber's. Now, a lot of people wanted to hate on Amber, but she didn't know. She didn't know. And Scott seemed like an absolute dreamboat. He was turning on the charm, just impressing her, pretty much like he had done with Lacy years ago. During this time, Scott was telling Lacy back at home that he was working, work conference, work meeting, work. So 3 weeks before Christmas, Lacy's grandmother, she passes away. She did leave quite a bit of inheritance. The entire estate totaled around $2 million, and it was going to be split between Lacy and her two siblings for when they turned 30. On December 9th, Scott asked Amber if he could come over because, he needed to tell her something. So he goes over to her house. And when he got there, he just sits at the kitchen table and he starts crying. Amber's thinking, oh, geez, here we go. So he's crying and he tells Amber, like, I lied to you. I haven't been 100% honest. And she's like, what is it? What? I've been married once before, but she just recently died. And this is going to be my first Christmas without her. This is what he tells her. Now, his wife isn't dead. She's pregnant at home, which is all sorts of suspicious. Now, Scott tells Amber that he doesn't want any biological children and that her daughter would be enough for him and that he was open to getting a vasectomy. Maybe this was supposed to make Amber happy or something. We don't know. But she was like, that's a bit extreme, but okay. So Christmas and all that's approaching. And Scott tells Amber that he's going to be traveling the next couple of weeks, but wanted to try his absolute best to keep their relationship going while he's traveling the world. On December 15th, Sharon, Lacy's mom, she goes over to Scott's and Lacy's house. And sadly, this would be the last time that she sees her daughter.